If you're seeing this, it means you've already stepped into the experiment, somewhere in the background of your life. The universe has been running a quiet, double-slit test with your attention, your breath, your choices. Two paths, side by side, vibrating with possibility. One leads deeper into the same loop you've been repeating for years. The other opens into a reality you've felt in dreams, synchronicities, those strange "how is this even possible" moments. And right now you're standing at the threshold where your next observation decides which path solidifies and which one disappears like a ghost track in the snow. What if I told you that your nervous, scrolling your racing thoughts, your shallow breathing are not just stress habits, but the way you keep collapsing the same old outcome over and over again? That every time you rush past the quiet, you're unconsciously choosing one slit, one pattern, one familiar version of you, even while your deeper self is begging to explore another. You think you're just surviving the day, but at the level of the field you're casting a vote again and again for the same timeline. Not because you're broken, not because you're failing, but because no one taught you how to pause at the right moment in the experiment, how to slow before the shift. Imagine this, your life as a lab with no white coats, no machines, just you, your breath, and the invisible field around you. The messages that trigger you, the deadlines, the awkward silence after a difficult text. The late-night replay of that one conversation, every one of these moments is like a photon approaching the slits. If you stay on autopilot, your nervous system does what it has always done. React, brace, speed up, defend. The wave of possibility collapses into the same pattern of behavior, the same story, the same "this is just who I am." But if in that exact instant you were to slow your breath, soften your gaze, and slip into the role of observer instead of reactor, the experiment changes. The field rearranges. The pattern on the screen of your life is no longer predetermined by your past. This isn't about forcing calm or pretending everything is fine. It's about discovering that there is a tiny gap, a fraction of a second, between what happens to you and what you encode into the field in response. Most people spend their entire lives barreling through that gap like a car, running a yellow light, never realizing it was the doorway. You're here because something in you is tired of running that light. You can feel there's a shift coming, personally, collectively, maybe both. You don't need a prophecy to sense it. It shows up as that low-level anxiety. You can't explain the sense that time is speeding up, that your old coping strategies are giving you diminishing returns. In a moment, I'm going to show you how to access that gap on purpose, how to use your breath and awareness as a bridge, not as medical treatment, but as a precise way to relate differently to your own experience. This is educational, not medical advice. You're always responsible for your own health choices. But if you've ever suspected that your state of being matters more than your to-do list, that stillness has a kind of quiet technology inside it, then this is your last gentle warning. From the universe's lab tech slow before the shift. Because in a double-slit universe, the observer doesn't just watch. The observer decides which reality gets to exist. And tonight, that observer is you. You didn't wake up this morning planning to run an experiment on yourself, but you did. You've been doing it every day for years. Same triggers, same reactions, same stories, different outfits and faces, same pattern on the screen. The sense of being stuck in a reality loop isn't punishment or lack of willpower. It's a sequence firing so fast that it feels like fate. Something happens, that's the trigger. In an instant, your breath changes and your body shifts. That's the state. From that state, your mind grabs an old explanation. That's the meaning. From that meaning, you act, and the results feed back as evidence that the story was true all along. Most people never notice this mechanism. They only see the outer movie, the arguments the bank balance the silence after messages. But underneath the loop is being etched by the same hidden chain trigger: breath, state, meaning, action, evidence. Imagine a projector behind you. The film reel is your conditioned state. The light is your attention. The screen is the life you experience. If the reel doesn't change, the film can't change. You feel this most around money. The trigger might be opening your banking app or watching someone else celebrate a win. Your breath catches, your stomach tightens, your shoulders roll forward. From there, meaning rushes in. I'm behind. I'll never figure this out. It's too late. Action follows. You avoid the numbers, delay the important email. Say yes to work that drains you because you're afraid nothing else will arrive. At the end of the month, the evidence appears not enough again. The field around you gets encoded. This is who I am. With money. Relationships follow a similar pattern. The trigger might be a delayed reply, a vague text, a hint of distance in someone's voice. Your heart rate spikes. Your breath turns shallow. Your chest tightens. Old meanings surface. I'm too much. They're pulling away. I'm about to be abandoned. From that meaning you cling with draw test or pretend you don't care. The other person feels the tension and responds from their own loop. Evidence lands right on cue. C. People always leave. Even when no one else is around, the loop keeps running. A stray memory appears. Your breath shortens by a few millimeters. Your posture sags. Meaning rises almost automatically. I'm broken. I should be further along. Something's wrong with me. From there, your action might be to numb out, overthink, or start another self-fix project. When that collapses, the failure becomes fresh evidence. The loop isn't just in your circumstances, it's in the way you breathe, translate, and answer your own life. Here's the unfair feeling part. Most of this loop is decided long before any visible action. It gets locked in at the breath/state layer. Once your body has snapped into a pattern, tight, jaw clenched, belly fast, upper chest breathing, the meanings available to you narrow. In that state, you don't see options that would be obvious from a calmer body. It's like trying to admire a landscape with your face pressed against a wall. This is why you can give wise advice to a friend, yet feel lost in your own story. Their situation doesn't trigger your loop, yours does. Through a quantum metaphor, imagine each trigger as a wave of possibilities moving toward the double slit of your nervous system. One slit is survival hypervigilance shutdown, people-pleasing, fight or flight. The other slit is presence, regulated breath, grounded awareness, a curious mind. Whichever slit your breath passes through in the first seconds after the trigger shapes the interference pattern, the behavior and outcome that appears on the screen. If your days are built around rushing, your attention never reaches the control panel. The survival slit wins by default, and the same pattern appears again until it feels like identity. Over time, this repetition turns from frustrating to heavy. You start to suspect that no course practice or affirmation can touch whatever is steering you from underneath. You might call it trauma or wiring. Those lenses can be helpful, but when they harden into verdicts, they freeze the loop in place. The deeper truth is quieter and more empowering. Your loop is not a life sentence. It is a living script running in real time through body breath and meaning. Scripts can be edited, but not from inside the trance. The real crisis is that you've forgotten. You are also the one on the riverbank watching the water. When you completely identify with the current, the trigger feels like gravity and the reaction feels inevitable. Yet if we slow the sequence down frame by frame, something new appears, a breath-sized gap between trigger and meaning, a threshold where the observer can step in and redirect the wave. In the next part, we'll walk toward that threshold and begin to feel what changes when you choose which slit your breath passes through. To really feel what quantum means for you, forget the lab and imagine a single droplet falling toward a still lake. Before it lands, the surface holds every possible ripple. The moment it touches one pattern, spreads outward and becomes real. Your attention is that droplet. Your inner state is the height it falls from. Your choices are the ripples across the surface of your life. The observer effect in emotional language is simply this. The way you are being on the inside decides which pattern appears on the outside. All through the day, you move through invisible possibility clouds. Before you open a message, there are several ways that conversation could feel inside you. Before you step into a room, there are multiple versions of how you might show up. Before you check your account, there are many stories you could attach to those numbers. These are like overlapping waves around you. Then you do the simplest thing you notice. Noticing is more than seeing with your eyes. It is the flavor of awareness you bring. If you notice from a tight chest and racing mind, the cloud collapses into one kind of experience. If you notice from a steadier breath and softer body, it collapses into another. Same email, same room, same numbers, different observer, different universe. You've already experienced this observer effect in your own body. Remember a time when you were completely inside a story, angry, anxious, ashamed, and then suddenly noticed yourself being that way. It was as if a camera pulled back. You saw yourself pacing, rechecking your phone, replaying the same sentence in your head. That glimpse didn't fix everything, but it changed the texture of the moment. You were no longer only the character pressed against the screen. You were also the one in the back row of the theater watching. Nothing outside changed, yet inside new futures appeared. You could step away, delay the reply, breathe. That shift in available options is the observer effect. As lived experience, the field of your life responding to a change in how you are looking. Now bring back the double slit, but picture it as two bridges over a river. One bridge is lit with harsh fluorescent urgency labeled react. The other is lit with a calmer glow labeled notice. Every trigger sends a wave of energy rushing toward these bridges. When you are on autopilot, the wave races down react before you even know there was another way across. You raise your voice, you agree to something you don't want. You make a purchase you'll regret. Later, standing on the far bank, you wonder, why did I go that way again? As you practice small moments of inner coherence, one slower breath, one relaxed shoulder, you begin to sense microseconds of choice. The impulse to react still rises, but alongside it you can feel the watcher on the riverbank. The second bridge comes into view, and sometimes you find your feet turning toward it. In emotional terms, probability just means what I am most likely to do from this state. If anxiety has been your home base, the probability that you read silence as rejection is high. If self-doubt has been your soundtrack, the probability that you dismiss your own ideas is high. These are grooves created by repetition, not verdicts on your worth. Even if most of your past choices tilt the odds one way, the field of possibility inside you is never fully closed. The moment your state shifts even for a single conscious breath, the internal wave pattern updates. A response that used to be unlikely, like pausing, asking a kinder question, or telling the truth, gains weight. Practice that from a steadier state often enough, and it stops being rare. It becomes the new default. You didn't force yourself into a new identity. You changed what your system expects from you. This is why slow before the shift is not a slogan but an instruction. Without a pause, the old state loads, the old meaning snaps into place, and the old action fires. With a pause, even a brief one, you feed the field different information, a longer exhale, a softer jaw, a more curious inner question. These small shifts are not cosmetic. They are the variables that determine which version of you passes through the double slit of this moment into the next frame of your life. As we go on, remember that everything here is an educational metaphor, not medical advice. If you carry intense anxiety, trauma, or health concerns, it is wise to work with qualified support alongside practices like these. Our aim is to give you a clear way of understanding why your life has looked like one repeating pattern, and how observation by observation you can begin to tilt the probabilities toward a reality that reflects more of the truth of who you are. Imagine your life not as a straight line, but as a series of gates. In ancient Egypt, they told a story about what waits at each gate: a pair of scales, Ma'at's feather of truth on one side, a human heart on the other. If the heart was too heavy, the soul could not pass. You know a modern version of this feeling. When you lie awake at night replaying a conversation, sensing the weight of something unsaid or untrue. In that sense, the afterlife is not just another world. It is the very next scene of your day. Every time you move from one moment to the next, you cross a threshold, and the weight in your chest decides how freely you step through. Now translate that into the field language we've been using. Each breath is like stepping in front of those inner scales. On one side is the feather, a coherent breath, a hint of stillness, the quiet observer on the riverbank. On the other is the accumulated weight of hurry, resentment, fear, and self-judgment. When your breathing is rushed and shallow, it is as if you are silently piling stones onto your own heart. The wave of possibilities narrows, and the survival bridge lights up almost automatically. When you pause, soften, your inhale, lengthen your exhale. You remove just one stone so you can cross this gate with a little more lightness, a little more choice. The Egyptians built this wisdom into stone. Their temples were full of deliberate thresholds, doorways set low so even kings had to bow, chambers arranged, so that every passage asked for a different posture. Your day has its own sequence of such gates: the moment before you open your inbox, the second before you step into your home, the pause before you answer your child, your partner, your colleague. If you walk through carrying the whole noise of the previous room, the new space becomes just another echo. But if you bow inward, one conscious breath, one small release of the jaw or shoulders, you send a subtle signal into the field: I am willing to arrive here differently. In that tiny bow, the observer takes the front seat. Far from the Nile, early Buddhists were exploring the same territory from another angle. They practiced anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing as a way of returning to the riverbank of the mind. Thoughts were clouds moving across the sky of awareness. The point was not to stop the clouds, because clouds belong to the sky just as thoughts belong to a human life. The practice was to stop building permanent houses under every passing storm, notice a thought, feel the emotional weather it brings, and let it drift on. Here the breath becomes a bridge between mountain and valley. The mountain is your deeper awareness, stable and wide. The valley is the busy mind full of markets and noise. Most of us live in the valley convinced that the current weather is who we are. When you follow a single breath from beginning to end, you take a few steps back up the bridge. From that slight elevation, the landscape looks different. You can see trigger state, meaning action evidence, as connected movements instead of one solid block called me. Put these two streams of wisdom together and your personal double slit comes into focus. The Egyptian current whispers every moment is a gate. The weight of your inner truth decides how you pass. The Buddhist current adds every moment is a cloud. How you relate to it decides whether it rains or dissolves. Between them is your breath, the small stone path that lets you cross from one bank of experience to another. When you forget, you are swept along by the river heart. Heavy clouds, thick crossing gate after gate without noticing. When you remember, you feel your feet on the temple floor, your spine a little taller, your awareness resting closer to the mountain. These metaphors are not here to replace your direct experience or to make supernatural promises. They are educational mirrors, ways of seeing your nervous system in a more compassionate light. Ma'at's scales become a way to sense the weight in your chest before you speak. The sky and clouds image becomes a way to experience thoughts as weather instead of orders. The double slit stops being a distant physics puzzle and becomes a question you can quietly ask at each threshold. From which bridge will I cross this moment, reactive or aware? As that question returns more often, the loop you have called, my life softens at the edges. And each ordinary breath becomes a feather on the scale, a small but real choice in which direction your next reality will lean. Let's step out of theory and into the lab of your own body for a few minutes. This is educational, not medical advice. If at any point you feel dizzy, distressed, or overwhelmed, simply let the practice go. Return to your natural breathing, open your eyes if they're closed, and look around the room to ground yourself. You are in charge of the pace. Think of this less as a performance and more as a quiet meeting with the observer in you. If it's available, let your body sit or stand in a way that feels supported. You don't need a perfect meditation pose, just something stable, as if you were sitting on the riverbank watching the water flow. Let your eyes rest softly closed or half open, with a relaxed gaze. Without changing anything, notice how your breath is arriving. High in the chest or lower in the belly, fast or slow, tight or easy. You're not fixing the breath, you're simply acknowledging this is how the field feels right now. Now bring one hand gently to your lower ribs or abdomen if that feels comfortable. Imagine this area as the entrance to the calmer bridge in your double slit experiment. Take a slow inhale through the nose only to the point that feels easy, letting the breath travel lower so your hand moves slightly outward. Then exhale through the nose or mouth with a quiet sigh, letting your shoulders drop. Do this 2 or 3 times. With each exhale, imagine setting a small stone from your chest onto the ground beside you, lightening your inner scales just enough to cross this moment's gate. We'll now explore what I'll call coherent noticing. Inhale softly for a count of 4, pause in that tiny gap for a gentle count of 1, then exhale for a count of 6. If counting feels stressful, drop the numbers and keep the feeling an easy inhale, a brief natural pause, a slightly longer, softer exhale. As you breathe this way, imagine you are the sky, and each thought is a cloud. You don't chase or wrestle the clouds. You let them pass while your attention stays with the rhythm of air moving in and out. While you stay with this rhythm, slowly scan your body from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. Notice your forehead, eyes, jaw, then your throat, shoulders, chest, belly, hips, legs, and feet. If you find tension, don't order it to relax. Just breathe as if you were sitting beside that tension on the riverbank, watching it instead of becoming it. Let the exhale be a quiet invitation. You can soften if you like. You're also allowed to stay as you are. At some point, you'll notice the mind jumping in with commentary. This isn't working. I'm doing it wrong. What's the point? When that happens, recognize that you've just discovered your personal double slit in real time. One bridge leads to arguing with the thought, another to collapsing into it. A third bridge, the observer's bridge, is simply to say inwardly noted and return to the feeling of the breath. That single word is like Ma'at's feather light, precise, placed on the scale of the moment. It keeps you on the riverbank while the water of thought rushes by. Now turn this into something you can use in daily life. Before you open messages or email, pause with your hand on your lower ribs and take one coherent breath, easy, in brief, gap, longer out. As you exhale, ask, from which bridge do I want to read what's next? React or notice, then open. Before a difficult conversation, borrow 10 seconds in a hallway, stairwell, or parked car. Feel your feet relax, your jaw. Take 3 slow breaths. Remember the sky and clouds image. Around money, create a tiny ritual, hand on heart, hand on belly, 2 coherent breaths, then silently. This is a gate. I choose to cross lighter before you look at any numbers. You can close the day with the same principle. Before sleep, sit on the edge of your bed. Inhale gently, and on each exhale, imagine returning borrowed weight from your heart to the ground. Other people's expectations, imagine judgments, unspoken stories. You don't have to solve anything. You're simply choosing the observer's bridge as you cross from today into tomorrow. All of these are experiments, not commandments. If any practice stirs more intensity than you can comfortably hold, it's valid to shorten it, simplify it, or seek support from a therapist, coach, or trusted guide. The deeper point is this: every time you slow before the shift, every time you choose one conscious breath at a gate you used to rush through, you're teaching the field around you a new pattern and reminding your system. We don't always have to cross by the old bridge. Up until now, we've been studying the loop like a scientist behind the glass trigger breath, meaning action evidence, the same wave collapsing into the same pattern. Many people resign here and say, "I'm just wired this way, my past is too heavy." The turning point is not the day circumstances finally improve. It is the moment you feel that state comes before story and story comes before strategy. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and begin asking, "From which state am I trying to live my life?" Think of state as the color of light in the room. If everything is tinted red, even neutral objects look threatening. If it is gray, even opportunities look dull. From that state, your mind writes a matching story. People don't value me, or money is against me. Strategies then shrink around that story, and the field rearranges to confirm it. The breakthrough is realizing you can tend the color of the light before you decide what the scene means. Let's walk into the first applied scene: money. The trigger might be a bill, a declined card, a sudden expense. The old loop breath spikes, chest tightens, thoughts shout, "I'm failing," and you either avoid or grasp for quick relief. Instead, picture this moment as an Egyptian gate. You place one hand on your lower ribs, one on your chest, and take 3 coherent breaths in, gently brief gap out longer. On each exhale, you silently say, noted to the fear, "From this slightly clearer state, your story can tilt." "I'm doomed" softens into, "This is tight, but it is information." The field inside you opens enough to allow strategy. You might choose one grounded move. Open the statement, send a single email, move one amount, however small, toward savings or repayment. These choices are modest, but they come from the observer bridge, not the panic bridge. Do that repeatedly, and money becomes feedback instead of a verdict on your worth. Victim consciousness whispers, "Money is doing this to me." Creator consciousness answers, "I am learning this language one breath, one choice at a time." Now step into the relationship scene. The trigger is a delayed reply, a distant tone, someone turning away in bed. Old state breath caught high in the chest stomach, clenching shoulders curling inward. Old story, "I'm too much," or "I'm not enough," or "they're leaving." Old strategy, withdraw and punish with silence, or chase and demand reassurance. Instead, you slow before the shift, place a hand on your heart, and take a few coherent breaths. You picture the sky and clouds, your fear, as a cloud, your awareness as the open sky that is not harmed by any weather. From that slightly more spacious state, you let the story update. Instead of "they're abandoning me," it becomes "something in me is scared right now." That change moves you from accusation to honesty. Strategy emerges from there. You might say, "When I don't hear back, my mind tells a story that you're pulling away. Can we talk about what's actually happening?" Or you might write your feelings in a notebook instead of sending escalating messages. You may not change the other person immediately, but something crucial has shifted. You are no longer only a character in the scene. You are a conscious co-writer. Now walk with me into a leadership moment. You don't have to be a CEO. Leadership is any situation where your state influences others. The trigger is a problem landing in your lap, a missed deadline, a conflict between colleagues, a child melting down, a global headline that rattles everyone. Old state, adrenaline tight jaw, the sense that you must fix everything right now. Old story. If I don't hold it all together, everything falls apart. Old strategy, micromanage, overpromise, or shut down emotionally while pushing others harder. This is where stillness as public art comes in. Before you speak, you take one coherent breath in front of everyone. You feel your feet, let your spine lengthen, let your exhale be complete, and you don't rush to fill the silence. In that pause, you remember the riverbank. You can watch everyone's panic and your own, without drowning in it. From that anchored state, the story shifts from, "it's all on me," to, "we're in this together." Strategy becomes simpler. You ask a few grounded questions, name what is true, and commit to the next step. Across money, relationship, and leadership, the pattern is the same state: first, then story, then strategy. Victim mode keeps rearranging actions while staying in the same survival state and believing the same inherited story. Creator mode turns upstream. You tend to the state with breath posture and a gentler inner voice, then let a new story arise that honors your experience without making it your destiny. Only after that do you choose strategy. Life will still bring waves, but at more and more gates, you are the one deciding which bridge you cross. Stillness is not a luxury at the edge of life. It is part of what makes a human life feel like a life at all. Just as every city needs one place where nobody is trying to sell you anything your inner world needs, moments where nothing is demanded of you. No performance, no fixing, no proving, just awareness. Each time you sit on the inner riverbank for a single breath, you are quietly saying, "My existence is allowed even when I am not producing." From that place, your choices stop feeling like desperate reactions and start feeling like responses that actually belong to you. You already live inside philosophy, whether you use that word or not. Do I belong? Does this matter? Am I only the river, or also the one watching it move? The old loop tried to answer for you. You belong. If you are useful, you matter. If others approve, you are whatever today's result says. No wonder your breath learned to hover high in your chest, waiting for the next verdict. The language of observer field and double slit is simply a different answer. You belong because you are already woven into the field. You matter because the way you observe and respond creates a pattern no one else can. When that idea reaches your body, compassion stops being a trick and becomes your default setting. You no longer treat tight shoulders, clenched jaws, or spinning thoughts as enemies to crush. You see them more like Mayat's scales, saw the heart not something to condemn, but something that can be lightened. Each coherent breath becomes a small act of mercy. You don't have to carry this all alone. You stay responsible for what you say and do, but you stop confusing your worth with the stories your past taught you to repeat. The observer in you does not deny pain. It simply refuses to make pain the whole definition of who you are. From here, agency returns without swelling into grandiosity. You are powerful, but not because you control every event. Your power lives in how you relate to what arrives, whether you rush over the old React bridge or pause at the gate and take the notice bridge instead. You cannot command the river, yet you can choose your seat on the riverbank and the tone with which you greet each wave. The field is not your servant, but it does respond to the signals you emit through your state. Every coherent breath is a small vote for a timeline where you are less reactive, more honest, and closer to what feels quietly true. As this deepens belonging, loosens from other people's approval. Recognition and success may still matter, but they stop being the only proof you trust. You begin to feel a quieter belonging in the simple fact that you are here, breathing and alive. Meaning stops being a trophy you will earn. Once you fix yourself and become something you encode into each encounter, the way you listen to a friend, answer a child, respond to your own fear. In those moments, stillness becomes a kind of public art, an invisible sculpture in the room. People may not know why it feels different around you, only that their own breath softens in your presence. None of this asks you to stay perfectly awake. You will forget. You will rush gates, cross old bridges, say things you wish you could unsay. But every time you remember the riverbank, the sky and clouds, the feather on the scales, you shorten the time you spend inside the trance. Loops that once swallowed hours can unwind in minutes. Spirals that used to consume weeks can soften with one honest conversation or a few coherent breaths at the end of the day. And you are not doing this alone. Somewhere right now, another person is pausing before sending a reactive message, taking one deeper breath before opening a bill, choosing to listen instead of defend. You may never meet, but together you are nudging the collective pattern toward less reactivity and more presence, less inherited shame and more earned dignity. If there is one message at the center of all this, it is simple. You are allowed to slow before the shift. You are allowed to step into the role of observer without abandoning your responsibilities. You are allowed to build a life that is not driven only by fear, scarcity, or the need to prove yourself. Every time you claim that permission, you are not escaping reality. You are meeting it more directly. And in that clear, quiet stillness, you may discover that the universe has been less interested in your performance all along, and far more interested in the quality of attention you bring to this one unrepeatable moment. If you're still here, something in you already knows the experiment is personal now. It's not about theories out there. It's about your next breath, your next reply, the way you step back into your life when this ends. Before you scroll away, we'll cross one last gate together, not to become a brand new person tonight, but to send a clear signal into the field that the observer in you is awake. If it feels safe, let your body settle. Feel your feet on the floor, the support beneath you, your hands resting somewhere natural. Let your gaze soften or close your eyes, knowing you can open them at any time. This is educational only. If anything feels uncomfortable, simply return to your natural breathing or stop. Nothing here is about force. It's about contact. We'll take 3 coherent breaths. On the first breath, you step back to the riverbank. Inhale gently through your nose, letting the air travel a little lower into the body. Notice the small gap at the top of the inhale, then exhale slowly a little longer than you inhaled. As you exhale, imagine the rushing water of your day flowing a few steps farther away, just enough that you can see it clearly. You are not the river. You are the one watching it move. Second breath. Inhale softly again. Feel the chest and belly receive the air. Taste the pause at the top. Exhale slowly and let the sky and clouds metaphor come alive. Thoughts, worries, plans, clouds. Your awareness, the sky. No cloud, however dark, can damage the sky that holds it. Let that be quietly true even for this one breath. Third breath. Inhale gently, letting your spine lengthen a little. Pause. Exhale long and smooth and imagine you are stepping onto the notice bridge in your personal double slit. Behind you is the old React bridge, familiar automatic. Ahead of you, this bridge leads into the rest of your day. As you breathe out silently, tell the field around you, I am crossing this gate more lightly than before. Now choose one word that fits the frequency you want to carry from here. It could be trust, clarity, courage, tenderness, truth, or something entirely your own. Don't analyze it. Let it rise naturally like a feather landing on inner scales. When the word arrives, place it gently in your chest as if it were a small, steady light. We'll seal this as a conscious observation. Either aloud or inside, say, I choose to, your word, as the observer. Notice how that sentence sits in your body. You're not promising perfection. You're simply declaring which bridge you intend to cross more often, which sky you'll remember when the clouds gather again. If this transmission resonated with you, you're invited to stay connected, not just to the content, but to this way of relating to your own life. Subscribe to this frequency so these reminders can meet you at future gates, right when you are about to rush across the old bridge. Share this with someone who might be ready to sit on the riverbank with you and breathe. As you leave this space, remember the shift doesn't arrive as fireworks. It arrives in ordinary seconds when you slow before the next reaction, feel one breath all the way through, and remember that how you observe is already shaping what you will see. The double slit is not in a distant lab. It is in your next conversation, your next decision, your next quiet moment alone. And now you know how to cross it differently.